Assalamu alaikum. May peace be upon you. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of God, most compassionate, most merciful. My name is Adina Lekovich, and we are here at the Islamic Center of Southern California on this Sunday to talk about the hard topic of the day. And those of you who are joining us online, thank you for spending time with us while you were hopefully at home and getting used to the slowdown. I am excited to be joined today by two experts and friends, and we're going to have a chat about COVID-19 and what you should know and what we can do to help each other out during this really big change that will hopefully be temporary, and how to help each other get through it. I want to introduce you to our guests. Immediately here in the middle, we have Dr. Noor Khozam, who recently just finished a fellowship in infectious diseases at UCLA and is currently a volunteer staff attending at Olive View Hospital here in the LA region. And she's going to share with us from a medical perspective. And we also have with us Dr. Heather Laird, who is the director of the Center for Muslim Mental Health and Islamic Psychology. And she's also our in-house mental health professional here at the Islamic Center of Southern California. She sees members of the community on an as-needed basis and on a consistent basis and on a sliding scale. And we're proud to have her as a member of the Islamic Center family and serving in that way. So thank you both for being here. And we made sure to keep a distance between us, as everyone should be doing. Let's start with let's recap what we know at this stage. This might be a reminder for people out there, but at this point in the game, Dr. Noor, can you give us a recap about what do we know about what is COVID-19, where did it come from, and where is it now, today?
Right. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me today. So COVID-19 is the name that was given for the disease that is caused by the new coronavirus. The disease, as we know, started in China at the late December 2019, and now is responsible for this pandemic that we're witnessing. What are coronaviruses? Coronaviruses are common infection viruses in human and animals, and usually they cause common colds in humans. So for the most part, human coronaviruses are ones that cause mild diseases, such as common cold, flu-like symptoms in winter and fall. And rarely do some of those viruses get transmitted from animals to humans. And this is the third time that we're witnessing this, leading to this pandemic. The first two times, I don't know if you remember, the SARS in 2002 and the MERS in 2011 in Saudi Arabia, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome. Both of them were secondary to coronaviruses, but they did not develop into pandemics, thankfully. This one is the third time that we're having this transfer from an animal to human and then sustained human-to-human transmission leading to this pandemic. So this one is pretty contagious compared to the other two coronaviruses. This is kind of a recap about the virus. Where it came from, we know how it started in China at the end of December of 2019. It started as, doctors in the Wuhan city in China started noticing clusters of patients coming to the hospital with viral pneumonias, and they were all linked to a live animal market and seafood market. And soon enough, the number of people coming to the hospital doubled, tripled, and which led to the epidemic in China. The scientists and doctors in China were able to isolate that virus really quickly and identifying it and realizing that there is a big problem facing us. When they started, basically, by the time they started the measures to shut down everything, the virus has already spread to neighboring countries and spread to some countries in Europe. And as we see it now, in the remarkably, in 3 months, it has now has affected more than 140 countries and areas around the world.
140 countries.
Yeah. So this is how it started, and just I think earlier this week when it was declared a pandemic, which means there is sustained human-to-human transmission in different continents at this point, and that's obviously huge news and something that we have to grapple with for the next few months to come.
So where are we today? So
where are we today?
Yeah, it's Sunday today. Things have changed drastically just in
Right.
the last 3 days in terms of so many the businesses and of course schools getting shut down, and now we're on self-quarantine in many ways and being asked to
stay home.
Yeah, to stay home at least for the next 2 weeks and possibly longer.
Yeah. So I just wanna add to that. As now China is seeing number of cases dropping down because of really strict measures in quarantining people and shutting down and locking down cities, big cities, the epicenter of the disease has now shifted to Europe. So it's shifting closer to us. And now we're seeing the grave situation in Italy and Spain and maybe soon France. And I'm not trying to, I don't want to panic people, but it's good to learn from previous experiences because these countries are actually ahead of us in by 1 or 2 weeks. And so what we do now is very, very, very important to prevent what's happening in Italy and Spain at this moment. So far in the US, we have around short of 3,000 cases that are confirmed, diagnosed cases of coronaviruses. And with the most cases being in Washington and then New York, Washington State, New York, and California. And as the days are coming now, we're gonna see more and more cases being diagnosed because of lack of testing previously. And so I wouldn't be surprised if this number skyrockets in the next few days or few weeks, really exponentially. And the reason for that, I want to just make sure people understand that what we're seeing is only the tip of the iceberg in terms of infected people, because we only know the people who are tested.
Yeah.
But there are so many people who are transmitting the diseases who are not being tested. Not that it's necessarily everyone should be tested, and we'll talk about that later, but it's important to know that a lot of people who have mild symptoms, potentially no symptoms, can also spread the disease. And this is why what you do now today will impact what happens tomorrow, especially at the level of the healthcare system now. Okay. So, and that's the reason why we are stressing on the importance of acting now in terms of avoiding any large-scale gatherings, or even small-scale gatherings, like home parties, birthday parties, weddings. We know a lot of big events have been canceled, as they should be. But it is our responsibility now to also act on our small communities and small organizations.
Well, we were just talking before we started about I'm a mom of young kids, and yesterday we had a family play date, and today there might be a play date, but that it hit me this morning that the time of play dates is done, and these are now we obviously have to listen, and people did the grocery shopping, and we're going through these stages of accepting that we have to take responsibility for things we can't see, and for preventing something that is coming, right? Some people will get sick, and most of them, inshallah, we expect, based on the statistics, to survive. Many people are recovering. We have to remind people there's a very small percentage of people who even contract COVID-19 who are who are at risk to pass away. And that means that there's just so much that we can do, and that's what we're here to talk about with folks who are tuned in.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you talked about testing. This is a good time for us to talk about. Okay, so if you find that you have the sniffles or you're sneezing or coughing, or what are the symptoms that people should be aware of while they're staying at home, right? So step 1 is stay at home, and step 2, don't invite people over. Step 3, let's say you're not feeling well. What do you pay attention to, and what do you do about it?
Yeah, so let me just step back and talk about maybe the symptoms first, so that people can recognize what they should look for. The symptoms for COVID-19 are very similar to the symptoms of any common cold or flu, which is going to be hard to say, oh, no, this is flu or this is COVID-19. You really don't know at this point whenever you have the sniffles, if that's it. Most common symptoms that we're seeing, fever, cough, and shortness of breath. But it can manifest as body aches, nasal congestion, headaches, and so even if you don't have fever, cough, or shortness of breath, it still could be COVID-19 with just feeling malaise or fatigued. That said, so whenever someone is sick, not feeling well, the short answer is stay at home.
Stay at home.
Stay at home. And regardless, even if you're feeling even you have only slight sore throat and you can go on with your activities and can go outside and exercise or whatever, it's better to stay at home, so that, again, the goal is not to infect other people. Even if you have the flu and it wasn't COVID-19, we don't want to infect someone else with influenza or other common colds at this point, cold viruses. The other, so what to do when you have symptoms. If you are adult and healthy and you started having cough and whatever symptoms we talked about right now, but you're feeling okay, just stay at home for 14 days. Now I know that's easy said than done, so recognizing that is important. But it's very important to stay for 14 days or until the symptoms resolve, 24 to 48 hours after the symptoms resolve. Then you can kind of leave the house, maybe, potentially. But the extra caution you take in these situations, the better. But the point being is, if you have mild symptoms, you don't need, at least as of today, if you have mild symptoms, you don't need to go be tested, even if you have it. And the reason for that, we don't have enough testing capacity. And you might actually contract the virus if you go to the hospital or spread it on your way there. So if you're feeling okay, stay home and basically ride the illness until it's done. If you, however, if you have shortness of breath, you're not able to finish the conversation with someone because of shortness of breath. You're not able to go around walking in the house because shortness of breath. Chest pains, lightheadedness, very high fevers. Then this is where you need to seek medical attention. The best thing to do is to call the doctor. If you have a primary doctor, call the primary doctor and tell them about that, and then they'll redirect you to either the office or the urgent care or emergency room. But if you're not able to do that, if you don't have a primary doctor, call whatever urgent care or emergency room that is closest to you and tell them that you're coming. Give them heads up. And if you're not able to do that, just go to the ER. It's better to call before so that they know. If you have a mask at home, as a lot of people do, put the mask on before you go to the hospital or to the clinic. And finally, if you are in this age group, and we didn't talk about this yet, but the age group that now I would say the vulnerable population to have complications from this virus, from this illness, is the elderly population. Or older than 60. Not everyone who is older than 60 are elderly, but older than 60. And then people of any age who have chronic medical problems, such as heart disease, who are diabetic, and lung disease. So those people are at risk of having complications from the infection. And finally, the people whose immune system is compromised, so say patients who have cancer and are on chemotherapy, or patients who have autoimmune diseases and are on medications that modulate their immune system, those are also at risk of having complications from this infection and potentially death. And so these are the people we have to look for. Thankfully, kids are not affected by this disease. And for the most part, 80% of people will just ride it like a regular flu or common cold. So going back to testing, people who are in this category, so people who have medical problems, elderly, or people who are immunocompromised, even if they have mild symptoms, so some sore throat, some fever, some cough, but they're not feeling as ill, they don't need to go to the hospital just yet, but they should alert their physician, call their physician, tell them about their symptoms so that they are informed, and then monitor their symptoms. And whenever they don't feel well right away, go to the hospital or contact their doctor. The last category is people who are exposed to someone with COVID-19. So say someone met a friend, had dinner with a friend, and that friend was diagnosed the second day with COVID-19, then that person is still asymptomatic or may not have carried the disease, but still they should stay at home. This is where self-quarantine is necessary for 14 days or until we know that they have symptoms. Because they may have acquired it or not, but we have to stay for the 14 days of potential incubation period at home.
Time to be selfless. Yeah.
Yes,
Staying
exactly.
home is the most selfless thing you can do.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say if somebody contracts it, you said you'd stay home and write it out unless the symptoms get worse, and then contact your medical professional before you go in if you can. Are there medications for it? Is there a vaccine? As an expert in you work in infectious diseases, what do we know on that end?
Yeah, so in terms of medications, there are no medications that everyone can take, everyone at home can take for the disease. And most people, again, who have mild symptoms don't need any medications. There are certain medications, other antiviral drugs that are active against other viruses, such as HIV or Ebola virus, and another anti-malarial drug that are being actually now tested in clinical trials in China and the US on patients who are hospitalized and who meet the criteria for taking the medication. So they're weighing the benefit and the risk of taking this medication. And while there are, I would say, promising results for some of these drugs, the efficacy is not yet fully determined of these treatments. So from the general public perspective, if someone gets admitted to the hospital, then their doctors, they will assess and they'll see if there is a need for them to enter this clinical trial or get this experimental treatment for now or not. But at home, the only thing that people can do is take Tylenol for fever, or ibuprofen for fever, and maybe antitussive medications against the cough, and just rest, sleep, and eat well. That's the best medicine at home.
That's good doctor's advice.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for taking us through all of that information. Because now, hopefully, we're all better educated so that we can better protect ourselves and prevent the spread of the disease. I want to. But the vaccine.
Just because you asked me about the vaccine, just a quick note on that: we don't have a vaccine yet. Thankfully, because of the prior outbreaks of SARS and MERS, so prior to coronaviruses from animals, there were animal studies on vaccines for these two, but the outbreaks ended actually before the need to do the clinical trials for the vaccine. So they took those experiments, and now they're implementing them on this new coronavirus. So they will start the trials in April, actually, phase 1 trial, which would see if there's any side effects on people to start with, and then phase 2 and phase 3 to see if the long-term efficacy of this vaccine, how it will be. But from timeline perspective, It won't take less than 12 months to 18 months to develop a vaccine. And so nothing that we're going to be seeing anytime in the near future.
Right. So right now, again, it's about containment.
Containment, exactly, and risk mitigation.
Okay. So part of the risk mitigation, this is a good time to broaden the conversation. Dr. Heather, with so many people in self-quarantine, mental health issues either can be exacerbated or initiated because of the different circumstances that we're in, and there's no reason to panic. As long as we all do our part, excuse me, as long as we all do our part, then we can prevent the spread of the disease, of the virus, excuse me. And if and when people get sick, they will mostly ride it out, the better that we do. So let's talk about the psychological effects and the broader effects on the community. So from your perspective as a mental health professional, what is the broader psychosocial, spiritual paradigm we can use to understand what's happening with COVID-19?
Sure. So let's break that out deconstruct into the different parts. I'm going to address what you asked, but I think if we need to broaden the spectrum of how we're thinking about the whole event itself of the virus. Our community is very diverse, meaning that we have many populations from many different parts of the world that make up our community, as well as both immigrant and indigenous Muslims, right? And as such, there are a number of people within our community that have either maybe they've served as veterans for the United States military, or they have been in war themselves. Maybe they're refugees. Maybe they have families who have been through that process. They could be victims of violence, of past violence or domestic violence. There are a lot of different things that happen within the system of the community that without the virus itself, the fact that the way that people react to the virus is affecting their psychological perspective. So for people who may have had previous symptomologies of acute stress disorder or post-traumatic stress disorder, seeing people react hastily, seeing people panic, seeing people take all the goods off the shelves, right? The scarcity that they're viewing triggers their anxiety, triggers their flashbacks, their nightmares, their symptoms that you see in acute stress or post-traumatic stress, or anxiety and depression as well, right? And because that is occurring, then we have a more complex situation than just the question of how's the virus affecting the community. And this is actually happening, right? So we are getting phone calls and emails asking about people's triggered post-traumatic stress, and from various conflicts that have happened throughout history. So we need to be mindful of that, because each one of us and the way that we react to it and the way that we behave actually does more than, just the biological contributions we can make. The way that we respond psychologically will affect our family members, it will affect our neighbors, it will affect society as a whole. And we need to be mindful of one another in that way, so that we can decompress, de-stress, calm one another, and be there for each other. So psychologically, we can see many things happen, from things as increased anxiety. And those of you in the community that have heard me speak before, we need anxiety to get out of bed in the morning, so we need some anxiety. Otherwise, we lay like vegetables, which when you're quarantined at home may not be a bad idea. But we also need to not have too much anxiety, because it can be debilitating. And that can then again overwhelm our system of healthcare, because we may not have the capacity to handle all of the anxiety and depressive symptoms that people will exhibit. So to the extent that we can find ourselves in a calming fashion, we can, I think we're going to talk about in a little bit, right, the resources to do that. But so that's the psychological part. The social part is, again, how do we get that social nourishment without violating the boundaries of going out and exposing ourselves and others to the virus? Well, this is one of the positive aspects of technology. We often talk about the horrid aspects of technology, but this is one of the positive aspects of technology. So for our most vulnerable populations, like our elderly, we can FaceTime, we can phone call our elderly community members, and it's really, really important because they need that interaction just like everyone else. This is an opportunity actually for a lot of things, but one of them is to reevaluate those people we haven't been in touch with. Reach out to them, give them our love and their blessings, just to see if they're okay, to let them know that we're thinking about them. That connection alone, even if it's just virtual, will give people a heightened sense of belonging, which oftentimes diminishes symptoms of anxiety or depression. So to that extent that we can do that, the better we will be as a community. And we can all do that. If we have access to technology, we can contact someone. And imagine if we all contacted 5 people, our community would be covered, just like we can transmit the virus to 5 people. We could actually decompress with 5 people. So there's a great opportunity in the social sense of that paradigm to have a positive impact and take away from the negative deficits of spending time together in too close of proximity. The spiritual aspect, it's incumbent upon us, and many of you probably have seen from different posts on social media and elsewhere, that we have an obligation actually not to cause harm to others. And we have, even within our texts, our religious text, discussions about plagues and how we, if we can't leave, if we're in a land where a plague hits us, we are obligated to see that through, right? And we hold on and carry on, right? We hold strong with the belief that Allah has got us. Allah's got our back. Allah's going to protect us. And we tie our camels, we put our faith in Allah, and then we carry on. So it's a time to dig deep. Again, another opportunity, especially if you're at home with your children and your family, to reinvest in your deen, to get those texts out and start reading again, to be reassured that you're not in this alone, that Allah is always there. And again, knowing and reaffirming that if you are physically alone, but knowing that Allah is there with you, that you're never truly alone. So allowing yourself that nourishment of being able to, again, stay calm and decompress and loosen that anxiety because you're not alone. So those are some just theoretical ways of how we can do that.
Yeah, and very practical at the same time. I mean, we can be alone together, and that's what technology allows for us, and also finding that excuse me, a new sense of togetherness with our families while we are at home, and this way that Allah creates opportunities for reinvention, and we're seeing that around work, around school, around so many different aspects of our lives being disrupted, and even with our religious lives. You talked about the elderly folks being the most susceptible, or the older you are, the more susceptible. And I'm grateful to the Islamic Center and mosques across the country and around the world who made the hard decision to not have Jummah prayers, alongside so many other institutions that are not gathering people. But when people can't come together in community, what can they do? Let's talk about what we can do while we are at home to both support our physical health as well as our mental health. Do either of you have tips you can share with people?
Well, I just want to add to what you were just saying there, Adina, that, I mean, if we have the example with the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, he advised the Sahaba, right, to, like if you pray with your hands folded, sometimes pray with your hands to the side. like the Malikis do, because to understand what others go through, to understand what others experience. And in the same way, we're having to do that now. This is actually bringing us to an awareness. We might not be able to go to Juma every time. So how do we adapt to that? Something that's kind of shocking when people are used to doing that every Friday for their lives, to have to try something different. But this is allowing for that opportunity to say, okay, let me be in this space that feels different, and have an appreciation for that we take for granted. We can go every Friday. So there are a lot of opportunities in this. If we can see them, we can make our lives potentially better. And I hope, inshallah, that we can, whatever we are able to do out of this that's positive, we can keep it going into the future, instead of just doing it to plug, or patch the situation, that we can just keep it going. To that end, we have here at the center, we have online resources for mental health. If you need professional services, those continue, because we have an online encrypted end-to-end platform that will allow you confidentiality, and you can contact the center via email or by phone to get those services, or you can email me directly at cmmhipdirector@gmail.com. We have...
Hold on, slow. One more time, slowly.
Yes, CMMHIP, so the acronym for the Center for Muslim Mental Health and Islamic Psychology, director@gmail.com. We have more than myself. We have other clinicians. We have one clinician that's bilingual in Urdu, and another that's bilingual in Spanish also. But beyond the professional services, there are things that you can do at home. I noticed there's some things that reduce anxiety, for example. Yoga has been proven to, for some people, to reduce anxiety. And there is a website called Gaia.com or .org, not really sure actually. It's .com or .org. It's GAIA. They are offering 5 days of free videos. They have some really great videos that do not conflict with our deen, that can help reduce anxiety. Additionally, there are other guided imagery resources online. UCLA has a great website for guided imagery that's free, that can walk you through how to relax, and so forth. But beyond the external resources, you can also, we have research that suggests that using your tasbih actually reduces your anxiety. So the rubbing of the beads, the remembrance of God, can reduce anxiety. And for others outside of our faith tradition, that would look like worry beads, or the rosary beads for the Catholics. And so those are two ways that you have general access to, that most people can get access to. Also breathing. So breathing allows for reduction of anxiety. Taking long breaths, or maybe it's long self-care, since we're going to be at home, of long baths, taking naps, walking, with some discretion.
Yeah, thank you for all of those. Yeah. I think there are endless opportunities for us to, again, like reinvent our homes. I know I hear people who are already in spring cleaning mode, using the opportunity to Marie Kondo their house, and get rid of stuff. And it gives us the opportunity to go deeper with our children, which also begs the great advice of creating a routine while we're at home. What would you say about the physical aspect, even the idea of getting outdoors, even for a walk around your neighborhood? How can we stay healthy while we're also trying to respect social distancing and public health?
Right. I think, the idea of self-isolation at home is not, it's not prison. It's not prisoning ourselves at home. So you can still go out and walk around the neighborhood. you should actually go out and walk around the neighborhood. Otherwise, that will weigh a lot on the mental and physical health, and will actually lead to counterproductive behavior after a few days, just because you just want to go out and do everything. And so, going out around in the neighborhood, walking, jogging, at this point, definitely avoiding gyms especially when it's crowded or when there are classes. I think a lot of the gyms canceled their classes. Actually, they just left equipments that usually they wipe after. But again, the less here you do these things, the less you go to any a place that you may be at risk of catching the infection, the better it is. And I would just like to add one thing, is that not watching the news or reading the news 24/7. And really this takes really like a personal moral responsibility to not hit this forward or resend button to different people, because it's just like the news are as contagious as this virus, and I think it's actually worsening the pandemic that we're living. It's really worsening what's going on. And so if we just stop and just be mindful about every time we read an article that is that makes us anxious or panicky, or there is a lot of non-evidenced, I would say, information online. So it's good to stay informed, but up to a certain level, it becomes information overwhelming, and then the curve go down, and you're less informed after you're too informed, and more paralyzed, more paranoid, and we certainly don't want that, because that's counterproductive dealing with this situation. So whenever you catch yourself like breathing fast and you're on their phone, just put it away and grab a book or go for a walk, or just and don't resend. Especially that's something I thought about personally, is that if you have anxious friends or anxious family members, even if the piece of news that you're sending is accurate and true, do not send it. There is like no benefit of sending something that will make other people more anxious, and not necessarily make them more informed about the situation, if that's making sense.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. We are going to close in just a couple of minutes. I want to go back to the online piece, since so much of life has moved online, just like this forum, and the Islamic Center is moving online for at least a few weeks to support the spiritual life of our community members who are out there and who are looking for connections. I'd love to share any other resources that we can connect to people online. One that I'd like to share for parents out there, I facilitate the parent circle here at the Islamic Center, so it's my natural lane, is that there's a lot of online educational software that's free right now, that educational companies are making accessible for free, that you can look up online, and I'm sure Google or any other search engine will give you an answer to that. What about mental health services? You said earlier, so I want to clarify for people, if you're looking for mental health services through Dr. Heather Laird and the center, you can you can email info@islamiccenter.com to get her direct contact information. We preserve confidentiality to the utmost. None of this goes through the Islamic Center in any way, except to share referrals with Dr. Laird. The Islamic Center has nothing to do with it. And appointments are will be available digitally. So, and it's also available on a sliding scale. And I believe there's some free therapy that's available if people can't afford it at all, or am I overstepping? Be clear and honest.
Well,
Let's say,
theoretically, we have that, but I don't believe they.
Okay, so we have the sliding scale at this time. Okay,
yeah.
I want to be clear with people, but it's but reach out.
But we if anybody is in an emergent need, we won't turn people away.
Exactly.
For sure.
Yeah, reach out. The Islamic Center has, there are zakat funds that are available, and this is a time of extraordinary need. So we don't want anybody out there hesitating. If this is the only option that you have, and if you feel comfortable by working through the Islamic Center to get in touch with Dr. Heather. That's the service that the center wants to offer. So it will, we will meet the need one way or another.
And I think that it's important while we're at it to mention that our needs, our psychological needs, are not just met through our talk, right? We also have the needs for food and for shelter. And the center also has resources for food scarcity. So for people that are suffering from not having adequate food, you can also reach out to the center. The Social Services Committee is well aware of the need and are willing to fulfill that need. And so they're actively working to do that. We have a great team here at the center working on many different aspects of our psychosocial, spiritual, biological well-being. And we should avail ourselves of that. It's a time like this, we don't want to be shy. Sometimes you do need help, and it's okay to reach out for that help. There's no shame in reaching out.
That's right.
And the services are available here. We're really putting a lot of effort into making sure that is available.
Yeah, and the leadership at the Islamic Center is having a board meeting this morning by telephone to be on top of things and to provide services to the community. This is a great time for us to share any last-minute tips, and as I let you gather your thoughts for anything you want to close with. On this note, the Islamic Center is serving the community. I want to invite you to hit the donate button and to give to the Islamic Center right now to be able to help people in need. We can stretch as far as as far as you allow us to in order to be able to help people. So please do hit the donate button. And I want to remind people that the Islamic Center is closed. The physical building is closed through the end of March. And everything will be available hopefully online. That includes Juma, the khutbah, online Fridays at 1 o'clock, and the Sunday programs will continue to be online. That also includes our youth program. So the Muslim Youth Group, which is for high school students, they're doing a youth group live on Instagram to meet the needs of their generation, and the junior youth group and Sunday school, they're also looking into other options to be able to stay connected with people, because this should not be a time of loss. It should be a time of benefit. And that was reminding me of what we know from the Quran, which is the beautiful verse, فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. For surely with hardship there is ease, and surely with hardship there is ease. I used to think that it was surely after hardship there's ease, but I've been told that in the Arabic it's that surely with hardship comes ease. And so may we find more ease as we deal with this hardship, as we connect with each other.
Well, there's even a duality in the Arabic. So you have, with every one hardship, two eases.
I like that.
Inshallah.
I haven't heard that. So we are rediscovering ourselves, and may Allah give us opportunities to come closer to each other, even while we are physically more distant, and have more opportunities to find deeper aspects to our faith and more meaningful connections to Allah, especially as we figure out what Ramadan looks like this year. There are so many questions that we still have to answer, but may Allah give us all the courage and the patience to be able to meet the time. So final tips, and then we'll close it up.
So I actually have a few, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
So I have been contacted by some of you asking, what can I do? Like, I'm healthy, I don't have a lot going on, but what can I do? There's a lot of things that you can do beyond reaching out to people telephonically, like we mentioned. You can also donate, right? Oftentimes people think that donating is not as an active participatory event, but donating is a great thing. It's something that's needed right now. So if you look at the bottom of your screen on this live stream right now, there's a donate button, and you should use it if you can. This is one of those times where donating is really important, and so if that's what you can do, that's what Allah blessed you to do. Those of you who can give in other ways, whether it be to deliver, help deliver, volunteer in delivering food with all of the precautions in mind, that may be something to explore with the appropriate precautions. But for those of you who feel like, I don't know what else I can do, donating is something that is really needed and can happen by the click of a button. I want to also mention next Friday, on the 20th, we are having an online art therapy session. It was originally supposed to be in person, but it's going to be online, and this is good for all ages. So if you are interested, you do need to email us, because since we are not doing it live in person, we have to send you the materials. So we will need your email to do that, so that you can participate. But this is great for anybody of all ages. We'll be starting at 8 p.m. Pacific time. So anybody in the country can participate, actually, but it's something your whole family can participate in.
Did you say where they can register?
They need to email us.
How? Where?
Email cmmhipdirector@gmail.com, or you can email the info email at the center, which is
info@islamiccenter.com. You can also go to islamiccenter.com and just hit contact us, and there should be a form there that you can fill out, and all of that. The center staff is still working. We're still being staffed right now, and you will get a response within 24 hours, most likely.
And then the last thing that I will mention, we are working right now on having also some resources for families while they're at home, because all of the schools are closed. And this is a great time to reset patterns that haven't been working. So one of the things, we also have services here for the New Horizon School Los Angeles, which is located in adjacent to the Islamic Center. And so as we think about all of those young people who are out of school right now, one of the things that we've noticed is children not getting enough sleep sometimes. Sometimes children are not having a good homework study routine. So this is a great time to reset that pattern. Sleep is so essential to our health, as Dr. Noor will be able to verify. It is so essential to your studies, to your health, to your immune system, that sleep, if we can get good sleep patterns during this time alone, that will do so much for our community. But we can also work on study skills and study habits, which we're hoping to have some online instruction during this time that we're out.
Okay.
Inshallah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I agree about sleep. It's very important. It really does heal. Just few points I want to add is that we still don't know the effect of this pandemic on us in the U.S. Yet the scale of, I would say, this pandemic on us. But whatever we can do now will prevent horror stories in the future. And so we are all seeing what's happening in Europe, specifically in Italy. And one reason that the hospital system is so strained right now is because a lot of people got infected at the same time. And so there are just no equipment, no rooms, no beds, nothing. And so, again, this is just to emphasize that the social distancing that we're doing now, even though it feels trivial, it feels silly, it's very important. And remember that it's better to look back and say usually when we look back, we don't say I wish I did less, we say I wish I did more. And so this is the time where we should do more. The other thing I just wanted to point out, a few recommendations that for people who have medical problems, chronic medical problems, who are on medications for heart disease, lung disease, diabetes, hypertension, I think it's since we don't know what's going to happen in the next few weeks in terms of just pharmacies and hospitals being and doctors being capped, it's a very good time now to actually call the doctor or the pharmacy to get a refill for your prescriptions for the next 3 months, just so that you don't have to do it in the midst of like the outbreak here. And stock on food for usually for 2 weeks to 30 days. You don't have to stock for 6 months. Hopefully we're not going to need that. But I think because we also want to leave for other people if we take everything in the store. So 2 weeks is a good amount of time basically to stock for. Wash your hands with soap a lot. That's better than using the hand sanitizer. If you're not able to wash your hands, then use the hand sanitizer, more than 60% alcohol. Wipe down surfaces whenever you can, doorknobs, whatever you can do at this point. Yeah, one more thing is masks, about masks, sorry.
Oh, good. Somebody
Yeah.
asked a question about masks. Like, should he wear a mask to the medical center if he has to go to a hospital for any reason? Is it just good practice to wear a mask?
Yes. So
There.
if you in the general public, you should not. If you're walking around, you should not wear a mask. If you're not sick, if you're sick, definitely you should wear a mask. If you're sick, you should not leave home. But if you have to leave home and you're sick, you definitely should wear a mask. And if you're going to the hospital, you should wear a mask. But otherwise, traveling, even though it's not advisable to travel at this time, even domestically, if you're not sick, you don't have symptoms, those masks are better used at the hospitals. We're having actually shortage of masks in the hospital, equipments, protective equipments, because of how people are hoarding these things. And then the other use of the mask, if you're at home and you're sick, we know that you're sick, and there are other people living at home who are not sick, these other people can wear a mask, or you can wear a mask so that you don't infect them. Yeah, that's the basic use for the mask at this point.
Do you suggest any?
Give her the mic, please.
Oh, sure. Sorry.
Because I was thinking about this as you were talking earlier, like preventive. You're giving some preventive measures now, but like I know people often talk about like vitamin C and stocking up on sort of. So people that feel healthy right now, is there anything that you recommend that they can do to bolster their immunity?
Yeah, sleep. No, seriously.
Sleep is the best medicine.
Sleep and rest. Actually, there is no evidence of all these multivitamins unless you really your diet lacks certain vitamins. But most of us here, our diet is enough for us to have the vitamins needed for our immune system and our usually to be healthy. So that said, I don't think that people should like spend extra money for these things, but if it makes you happy and less anxious to drink vitamin C, it doesn't harm. That's for me, if it deals with anxiety and stress, so why not? But there is no reason to like go out and buy multiple boxes to boost the immune system. No, I think using this energy to rest and watch something pleasant on TV and sleep well, and eat healthy food.
Contrastly, right, the stress will actually weaken your immune system.
Exactly. Yes, that's true.
So, Adina, I forgot one thing I wanted to talk about. Please. You don't mind if because when we're thinking about the system, the larger system, one of the things that's affecting people psychologically is work. The lack of work. Maybe they might be out of work because before we had this virus happen, this pandemic happen, there was research that suggested that families were one paycheck away from homelessness.
Many families.
Whole families, not just individuals, but whole families. With this pandemic that has set in, like, there are at the federal level some work being done to sort of help with that situation. However, that stress is real. It's happening. Businesses have talked about, local businesses have talked about suffering. Businesses within our own community, right, will suffer as a result of people not frequenting their businesses. So some suggestions I've read that to help in that situation can be shopping online to continue the flow of the capital system so that people will be able to keep their businesses going. Also, if you know of a restaurant that you like to frequent and you can't go right now, they've recommended maybe ordering out or like for delivery. Or just making reservations at the restaurant for the future to give those restaurant owners hope that you will eventually come back so that they can get through themselves, small businesses, this stress of this time. So those are other things we can do as a community to help us all stay together.
Thank you for that. Here in Los Angeles, Mayor Garcetti and the City Council and the Board of Supervisors have been listening to the news, and they're rolling out initiatives too to support small businesses and alongside the federal initiatives too. So these are things for us to all pay attention to and to make use of, especially for those who are the most vulnerable. You brought up earlier that the Islamic Center is here to help people, especially with food scarcity. And so I want to let you know as we close that while the Islamic Center is closed for daily prayers and all events, the food pantry is still running on Saturdays, on Saturday mornings, and it's running outside of the building rather than inside of the building, and in a more contained way, let's say, or in an appropriate way. So, those resources are here, and we hope you will use them. So one more time, again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank Dr. Heather Laird and Dr. Noor Khozam for joining us and having this conversation. And for those of you who've tuned in, thank you for spending this time with us. And we ask you again to hit that donate button and support the Islamic Center so that we can support the community during this time and every time. Thank you again so much, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. May peace and blessings be upon you.